back to Teaology. We're just brewing a relaxed tea which has got chamomile, lemon verbena, rose, lavender, just some really nice herbal little blend, and it's turning a nice little reddy brown colour here. It's a tea that I've had before that I really like, that's really nice, and just want to sorry about the lighting, it's a new place, new flat, and just still trying to figure it all out about where we're filming and what that's going to be like. But I really wanted to sit down and film something and talk with you all, and in particular what I wanted to talk to you about is my reading. This year I'm doing my masters, and so I don't have course reading in the same way where I have mandated things to read. Instead I'm sort of figuring out my own way a little bit, and a certain amount of this that's not all in this pile really will be reading for my masters to figure that out, what I'm doing the research. But I also really want to keep reading theology for myself and for my own sake, because I love reading it. There's a reason that I am studying it and talk about it a lot, is because I love it. And so just want to talk you through some of the books that I'm hoping to be able to read this year. I've got some potential video ideas and that sort of thing around, and others are just because I think it's really important to know. And so one that I thought I would start with talking about is Live No Lies by John Mark Comer. Recognize and resist the 3 enemies that sabotage your peace. The book is, I have started it a few times and just never quite finished it, even though I really want to. And it's just, I think a lot of it is because when I have been reading it, it's not been a headspace. It's been something where I've sort of wanted to read it but haven't made the space to read it and just absorb it and let the book be what it is. And so I'm hoping that this year I will be able to sit down and really just take it in. I've listened to the whole podcast series that goes along with this book and really enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoy John Mark Comer's speaking. I've enjoyed his other books that I've read of his, being Garden City and The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I just feel like this will be a really good one, particularly with some of the things that I'm thinking about this year and sort of keeping grounded in that sort of Christian living. How am I moving forward in my own faith and not just at a purely intellectual level? Another one that's sort of similar but different is a book that I have read before but I want to reread, and that is A War of Loves by David Bennett. This book is really, really good. It is autobiographical but has all sorts of theology and theological ideas webbed through it. And I find that the phrasing and the way that he links words together, really beautiful and really succinct and coherent, lyrical and wonderful and marvelous. It is about a person who is a gay atheist activist that finds God and finds Jesus and is like, how do I navigate that? The church and the space that rejects something that I find important, but also how do I continue to go after and be after God's heart? I follow him on Instagram, and just really fascinating, and I want to reread this one because I want to go through and annotate it. The copy that I read previously was a borrowed copy and I've got my own, so I want to annotate it and mark it because it's just a beautiful book that I want to love and show my love on the pages. It's one that I'm reading at the moment, so I don't have it on me, and that's called Living the Future, and that is about the history of the church movement that I'm a part of, the Vineyard Churches. And another one that is sort of similar and different, it's Atonement and the Kingdom, reviewing atonement and retrieving the gospel. And it is a book sort of made up with a whole bunch of different contributions from different Christian theologians and authors, and it is another one that is in sort of the Vineyard movement. As a theology student, I want to be in that space, and also I love my church my Vineyard family. I want to understand what are the conversations being had in that space as well, so I know that how I can contribute my voice and what God is saying to me into that space and my understanding, because we all understand and bring different things to a conversation, and to better know what I bring to the conversation, I sort of need to have an idea of what's going on in the conversation at the moment. There are a few books here that I'm want to potentially make a video talking about a little bit more in depth. And so there's also a copy of Mere Christianity in this box set. This includes The Great Divorce, Surprised by Joy, Miracles, The Four Loves, Screwtape Letters, and The Problem of Pain. This is Signature Classics C.S. Lewis collection. I want to do a series just talking through some of these books and C.S. Lewis's theology and understanding and what he added to the faith, and as a part of that, reviewing and talking about what each of the books sort of adds and builds upon. Now, this obviously isn't all of the books he wrote. There are a few others that I don't have that would potentially be included in a video or video series. I want to get started on reading them and understanding them so that I can do that one day. And also, I love C.S. Lewis. I love his writing style. I was a Narnia kid growing up, so all the more for reading more of his work. Another one that I want to potentially make a video on is The Cost of Discipleship. As you can see, I've started reading this and annotating it. It's a slow book, and it's one that I really want to process and take in what he's saying, and so I am really taking my time with it. But I put it down a little while ago and haven't really picked it up since, and so I really want to pick it up and get back stuck into it and stuck into the flow of Bonhoeffer's writing. Because if my first idea is one that is not seen as great for studies, then my second idea is one relating more to Bonhoeffer's work. So might be doing that for my master's anyway, but at this point we don't really know. I've got another idea currently in the pipeline that I'm going to see if something comes to fruition from. And then the next book that I have that I would like to read this year is Fresh Fire by Rosemary Wallace, about Revelation, Revival and Renewal in New Zealand, Aotearoa, 1766 to 2023. I actually have in some ways read this book already. I went through and did help sort out many of the footnotes for this book. It is a close person, it is my grandmother who wrote this book, so in some ways have read it, but I haven't actually just let myself be taken in and completely wrapped with the stories in it, because reading a book for enjoyment and knowledge is very different to reading it for helping one that I want to read and want to get around to soon. And I'm hoping that when my grandmother is back in the country and resettled, I might be able to get her to do a little interview where we could talk a little bit about this. So that would be really cool. If you guys would be interested in seeing that, let me know. But I would definitely be reading this book, definitely be posting a review of it at the very least. Would highly recommend getting your hands on it. It is wonderful, can be found in all sorts of bookshops and that sort of thing around New Zealand. I don't know about its overseas availability. If you really want a copy and you have no way of knowing how to get it, leave a comment or send me a message on my Instagram platform, which will be linked down below, and send me a message and I'll see what I can help with, as I am more connection to the publisher and publishing situation. So yeah, it is a beautiful, marvelous book about the moves of God in my country, Aotearoa. And then another one that is sort of still on that church history front is Therefore I Speak, which is Scottish theology 1500 to 1700. So you've sort of got two very different expanses of time covered here. And that is by Doniphan MacLeod. It's sort of looking at how the Reformation completely transformed the Scottish Church and the theology and all of the conversations that were evoked from that. Part of the reason I'm interested in this is because I do love my church history and believe it's really important to know our history, because this is where we come from. This is how we've got to where we are today, is through our church history. And in particular, I have a lot of Scottish ancestry and lineage. A lot of my family originally came to Aotearoa from Scotland, and so want to understand a little bit more, because most of my family would, well, not most, but a decent amount of my family would have been in Scotland during this time. And I have a long history of Christianity as well, and it is things that people in my family highly likely would have been living through and experiencing and going through. And so I think that's really interesting to learn about from sort of personal history perspective. But like, I would read books about church history that I'm not connected to in the same way, because no matter what, this is my family history, this is my whakapapa, this is how I get to where I am today. So I think it's really important that we know our history and know how theology has impacted people for the past generations and generations. Therefore, the truth I speak. The last one that I'm going to talk about today is this tiny little Penguin Classics copy of Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard is a very influential Christian philosopher, and he's German, so this is translated and this is translated. A lot of what he does is in response to Nietzsche and the sort of nihilist, but he doesn't completely reject it. He just sort of adds a level of reverence to God and discusses it in really interesting ways, as well as really unpacking and discussing the Bible. So I'm excited to get into this one, though from what I understand of Kierkegaard, he is not always the most easy person to understand. So this will probably take a little bit of thinking from my old noggin to actually get stuck into. I did start it, so I've read the introduction to this book, and it was really funny. I read the introduction to this book. I was sitting there on the bus just sort of reading it just to get an idea of what the story is about, and the guy next to me on the bus, well, sitting sort of a few seats away, but there's no one in between, turns around and offers me a bottle of wine, reading Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard, and it just feels quite funny that that was the book that I was reading at the time that I was offered a bottle of wine on the bus. I said no because I didn't know where the wine had come from. So yeah, those are the books I want to read. Obviously, I don't know how ambitious it is to get through all of C.S. Lewis's works this year. That might be a bit much for me, given there are a few other books that I definitely know I'm going to have to read, and ones that I don't necessarily have physical copies of at the moment that I'm going to get into that I will probably read as well. If I go maybe read 1 or 2, I feel like 8 to 10 books. Theology books is pretty reasonable for me and what I like. Absolutely no pressure on anybody else to read them. Many of these books I was able to find secondhand or were given to me, because when you make something like theology a huge part of your personality, people will probably give you theology books. And a few I inherited from people who were cutting down their theology collections. This also goes for all of the theology books here. But also I've been reading theology for quite a few years now and slowly building up my collection. So this is no pressure for anybody to have to go out and get these books. Many of them you can find online if you're really interested in them. So yeah, if there's any that you want to know more about or particularly interested in hearing my thoughts on, let me know down below. I would love to hear what sort of theology and things that you're planning on reading over this coming year. So if you have any recommendations or anything that you're really looking forward to reading, comment that down below. I would love to hear all about it. Thanks. Bye.